Good morning. Good morning. We'll give everybody a few moments to filter in here. Welcome to another edition of Account-Based Friday. Each week, my co-host Megan and I talk with industry leaders on a variety of sales, marketing, and CS topics. And today we've got a special guest, Christy Felteruso, who's the Chief Customer Officer of Client Success. She's going to have a great perspective of CS, and I can't wait to dig in. Before we dive in, up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see in the screen here, we've got over 180 best practices of sales, marketing, CS. We would encourage you to like and subscribe. All you have to do is click in that upper right-hand corner or get your phone out, click on that, and it'll automatically bring you to the subscription page. And if you're trying to find a particular answer to a question that you're wrestling with, you can always DM me as well. Each week we open up with a poll. This week is no different. And this week's poll is really around CS. Now, LinkedIn, we think, may have changed the algorithm here. But the reason this question came up, I was talking with the CMO this week, and there was some debate around who owns the expansion revenue responsibility in a company. Is it the CMO? Is it the CS person? Is it the CS team? Like, what are the metrics? And in this person's organization, they didn't think that CS actually owned any of the metrics for retention and renewal. They felt that that was purely a marketing viewpoint. I will say that that particular function of CS rolled right into sales. So more or less, it was a sales support function. But Meg, did you have a point of view on this week's poll?
I did. I was shocked. Granted, not a large sample, but the fact that anyone would say customer success doesn't have clear financial metrics and goals. While I don't think anyone would claim that CS should be responsible for all things retention, a lot of things go into whether or not you hold on to your customers, product, sales, everything. But to say that CS doesn't have clear financial metrics, that seemed odd to me. I'm surprised, and I'd be curious to hear from the people who voted false on that. But Christy, we are very lucky to have you here with us today. And I would love to get your take on what you see in terms of what kinds of metrics and goals customer success teams who are successful themselves tend to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this topic for a few reasons, right? It's interesting to me that it's still being debated. But I think because there are so many different types of organizational structures, it is still open-ended because, so for example, I've been at 5 B2B hypergrowth SaaS companies in my career, leading or transforming or, kind of building out customer success. In some of the organizations, we didn't own any revenue. In others, I owned renewals, but not growth. In some, I owned renewals plus expansions, but not cross-sell. Here in my current role, I own everything post the initial sale. So I think it really does come down to what's the organizational structure and what is the best model to support that? Because I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to structure it. I think it depends on, if you're selling Calendly versus are you selling Salesforce, right? So expansion on something where it's a per license model, great. Okay, I'm just asking my customers who are already getting value from the solution to consider helping others in their organization get more value, right? But if you have a cross sell, whether you're selling to a new buyer, a new business unit, that might have a different motion, right? So for example, at one of my organizations, I worked with GE. Okay, small company, everyone might be familiar with it. And so working with GE, we were selling into different divisions, and that was a new sales motion. It wasn't an expansion. It wasn't growth, right? Because the team I was working with was one part of their business, but we had to go and now get access to new buyers with new use cases and new budgets, new approvals. That's new sales. So I think when you consider that, maybe customer success is facilitating the lead gen behind it, right? We've identified that there is a unit in the organization that could get value. And so maybe we are being accountable for CSQLs, those customer success qualified leads, and those become metrics. But I do think it depends. And nobody likes that answer, but I'm gonna stick to that. So I fall kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it's what's right for your business.
Gotcha. Yeah, you really great points there, Christy. And I should have also added, if anybody has questions about CS, feel free to drop them in the comments. We have the ability to promote them up, and we can ask Christy or Meg or myself directly if you have questions. But Christy, I'm curious, you mentioned the 5 companies that you've been in that have been hyper growth. Like, how did you get to where you got to today? Like, what was that evolution like, or that journey like, out of curiosity?
Very accidental. I don't think anyone like early in my journey, right? So when I say my journey, so 2012, I think customer success was still very nascent industry or profession at that point. And I came from marketing. I spent a decade of my career in marketing. I thought I'd be a CMO one day. Like that was my journey. That was my path. But while I was in marketing, I had actually used a technology called Bright Edge, and I fell in love with it because it made me so successful in managing our search engine optimization efforts. And after I purchased their technology twice, I was basically like, hey guys, if you ever open an office in New York, hire me. I think this could work. And, lo and behold, they opened an office in New York. And what they do, they hired me. So they took a chance on a gal who knew nothing about SaaS, nothing about customer success, but I was a subject matter expert. So I basically spent 5.5 years at that organization, basically getting my PhD in customer success, quite frankly. And under great leadership, Joshua Crossman, who is now the CEO of a company called Magnify, he was my leader there for 5.5 years, and just a wonderful human and leader and really teacher, if I'm honest. And then I kind of just took what I learned there, and I kind of went on my own journey, right? I said, great. I went from an individual contributor when I started there. I left as a VP of customer success and practice development. And I was like, great, on to my next show. And I kind of just wash, rinse, repeat, found enough organizations that were crazy enough to hire someone like myself, and had great success. Most recently found myself at Client Success, where I joined 3 years ago as the VP of customer success. And less than a year into my tenure there, I was promoted to chief customer officer, where I now oversee all of our post-initial sales motions.
Yeah, Christy, I'd love to get your take on that. That's one of those titles where I think if you ask, 5 different companies, you're going to get 6 different answers about what that role is. In your view, based on your experience, what do you think is the right role for a customer or chief customer officer to play? And what do you think gets the most out of having that particular role?
Oh gosh, Mike, again, it's a big fat it depends, right? Like, so we were just talking about my podcast earlier and some of the leaders that I'll be interviewing or that I have interviewed who sit in a very similar seat, right? So one of them, a future guest that I've just procured, who's the CCO over a very large technology company, her role and scope looks extremely different than mine does, right? Client Success, we are a small organization. We're about 30 employees, a couple $1 million in revenue. And so the scope of my role is very different, right? The remit and responsibilities there. But I would say the thing that stands true, regardless of what organization you're at, you're responsible for the business success and the roles that your organizations and your purview really plays in contributing to that. And I don't think that differs from person to person. I think what we do practically and tactically in our day-to-day probably looks a little bit different, but I think at the end of the day, we're still accountable and responsible for similar things. So in my business, my primary focus is really ensuring that we're growing our revenue, right? Our NRR effectively. And so that is not just customer success. And we talked about this, Meg, right? Like how many different functions play a part in retention and growth? It's product, it's sales, it's marketing, it's customer success. So part of what my role entails is also the cross-functional collaboration, ensuring that we're all marching in the same direction to make that a unified outcome for the business. And so that's where I think the scope of a VP of CS differs from a chief customer officer, because now that cross-functional responsibility, that's more prevalent, right? I care more now about how sales is doing. I care more now how marketing is doing, because I can't be successful without their success, right? Whereas I was a VP, I was really focused on my business and how do we succeed at all costs, but really within my silo.
Now, you've got a really unique perspective there, Christy, of having the marketing background. So many, it almost seems like silos of people grow up. You grow up in marketing, you grow up in sales, you grow up, although it's probably newer in the last 20 years, the CS and CX side of things. Any advice on that relationship between marketing and CS, particularly as a leader? Like what's that dialogue like, or what should it be like? And it probably varies by org size as well, but what are you seeing there?
What's so interesting is that I think it's lost on people because there's been so much focus on like the relationship between sales and customer success, right? I think that, and then the relationship between product and customer success, those two are very obvious. And I feel like the less obvious one is the role that marketing and customer success play together within the business, and how that strong collaboration is really going to drive success. I think because I get marketing and I have an appreciation for what goes into it and the value it has on a business. I'm a little bit different, and I know that that is critical, and our collaboration will only make us both more successful. But I would say for businesses, in order to get that collaboration, you just really have to understand how you both drive each other forward, right? So for me, customer success, I can't exist without marketing helping us, whether it's through product marketing or customer marketing efforts, field marketing, right? Our brand, all of those things contribute to the customers that we bring into the pipeline, all the way through how do we retain our customers and grow them and develop them into advocates, right? Marketing is usually at the forefront of spearheading things like your customer advisory board, your customer case studies, your reference and referral programs. Those are just to name a few. And so all of the work that we do kind of culminates in those initiatives, and marketing is key in orchestrating that. Now, on the flip side, marketing needs successful customers, right? They need to hear from customers and where they're getting value from the product. What are the use cases? What does the future of our industries look like? That all comes from our customer base. The ones who are leaving reviews, the ones that are speaking at events, the ones that are going out there and championing your brand and your product, that comes from the customer base, right? They're your biggest sales channel. Marketing needs that. So when I think that there is a mutual understanding and respect for how we all thrive working together and how we rely on each other, I think organically that relationship starts to build.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and given that it is International Women's Day today, and thinking about really great marketing coming from authentic conversations and content, you've built a successful podcast. As you mentioned, you've been able to get some pretty great guests. Tell us a little bit about the She's So Sweet um, journey that you've been on. How did you start it? What was your inspiration, and how's it going?
Yeah, I will. I think my story is not unlike many women, depending on I guess how old you are. But growing up, I didn't have women leaders to emulate. Right. When I think about my professional journey, I started my career in publishing, and quite frankly, it was a very male-dominated space. And I would look at other leaders, and I don't mean the middle management, because I feel like women were all over the director or manager roles. But what happened was, is I looked at the executive leadership in the business. I just didn't see females to emulate. I didn't have a female mentor, and I really struggled because the leadership that I was emulating was that of male leaders, which is just very different. And so I struggled, stumbled all my way to the top. That's kind of my story there. It's like I failed forward in a very intentional way, I guess. But really, the big driver was not only how it impacted me over the years, but I have a 16-year-old daughter, and we just started looking at colleges. And quite frankly, I was thinking about her journey. Now, obviously, it'll be different for her, for her, because there are so many women trailblazers out there who are paving the path for her, and she won't have the same experience as I had. But I still don't see enough of those women voices amplified in all channels. So really, as I've thought about the platform that I had built for myself, how could I be that voice, right? How can I amplify the voices of these successful women? And so that kind of bred She's So Sweet, was this passion of like, I don't want other women to have the struggles that I had. And I want the future leaders, and I think of my daughter as a future leader one day. I want the future leaders, male or female, to be able to learn and grow from these examples. And so that really is where that was born from. And, we're early. It went live on Valentine's Day, which was play off the She's So Sweet kind of cutesy thing there. So we launched on Valentine's Day with 3 episodes. We've launched our 4th. We've got our next one coming out next week, but we've already booked over 24 female leaders in the C-suite to be part of this, and we're super excited.
That's a fantastic trajectory, and good luck with that, Christy. I know as a dad of twin daughters myself, I have been more in tune with kind of that dynamic of working women in the workforce, because they're both now in the workforce, which I'm still warming up to having twins, let alone them being in the workforce. But there's a lot of interesting dynamics that I have learned over the last. I've really been paying attention the last 6 years or so, and it's amazing. It's been eye-opening, quite frankly. And I'm talking to my fellow male species out there in terms of how they handle things and what could be improved. We could have a whole episode on that, to be quite honest. But maybe going back to your client success and CS and kind of the evolution perspective, there's a lot of pressure right now on cost models for go-to-market functions, sales, marketing, CS. We're all feeling a lot of pressure. what changes are you seeing in the CS role right now, or the customer service management side of things, in these businesses because of that pressure?
It's been interesting to watch, and I would say over the past 4 years. So we'll start at kind of like the helm of COVID, because I feel like that's when things really started to take an interesting shift. But if we look back even over the past 4 years, how this has evolved, I think there was a lot of pressure on customer success teams to take over revenue and to perform, right? New sales weren't coming in during the kind of height of COVID. Then you have last year's, whether you want to call it a recession or not, last year was not great for a lot of technology companies, especially in the SaaS space. So you have these 2 years where new sales aren't growing. There is a heavy reliance on growing the install base, right? We need to keep every dollar we have, and we need to find where there's new dollars to be had in that same pool. And so the responsibility fell on customer success. Now, the interesting thing here is customer success, if we think back years, was built off of this like, we're going to drive value for the customer. We're not sales. We're going to drive value. And hopefully from that value will come revenue growth, but we're not commercial, right? And so you have this like, I'm not going to be a salesperson mentality. And so a lot of people that just don't have sales backgrounds, they don't have that sales acumen. And so here you have companies that are tasking these customer success teams to carry a bag, right? Like carry quotas and targets and manage commercial conversations. But what we didn't do is we did not train or enable these folks to do it. We set them up to fail. And guess what? They did not perform to the extent that these companies were depending on them to. And so you know what they've done? They said, forget it. If you can't do it, we're going to find somebody else who can. And they've given it back to sales. Now, I don't think that that was fair, because I don't think we got a fair shot at it, if I'm being honest. But now you're seeing this shift, right? Whereas like, do we allow customer success to keep this? Do we move it under sales? What kind of consolidation are we making with these go-to-market teams? And then with customer success, where does that fall into? So I do think it's been an interesting time for us all. And the organizations that get it right, I will tell you, is if you have a very commercially minded leader over customer success who is not only hiring the right profile to manage revenue, but also investing in the training enablement that's required to continue to grow them in that skill set, I think they could remain owning revenue, and that could be wildly successful. But in the organizations where you don't have that, you're going to see it be gobbled up by revenue, those revenue orgs. And so I would not be surprised if we see more consolidation. We've already seen a lot. I would not be surprised if we see more consolidation under that. And honestly, I am also seeing something super sad, is that a lot of companies are shifting away from customer success because they haven't seen the impact that they need. They're moving back to an account management model. Now, account management, we could sit here and debate all day the differences and the nuances between customer success, account management. I think that there is a lot of overlap, but there are some core differences. And so seeing that shift will be interesting to see how that plays out long term. I'm going to say it here now and then quote me, and we'll come back to this in 2 years. But I do think that this will not be wildly successful. And we will at some point be back on this wheel of like, forget it. We have to drive more value and help our customers be happy and successful and have great experiences. So we'll see. But I said it here first.
I'm right there with you, Christy. I think we can get very short-sighted in challenging revenue times about why customers stay. And
Right.
it's because if you're doing something that helps them, they're going to want to keep you around, right? Impact, customer impact. What are your thoughts? We're hearing about companies sometimes sort of going off the deep end right now in terms of questionable contracting behaviors and sort of sneaky ways that they're trying to get people to renew and do other, things that are good for the company, but maybe really bad for the customer or unfair on the customer, making it really hard for them to get out of an unsuccessful contract, for example. What are your thoughts on what customer success leaders can do to sort of defend against pressure to maybe do some sketchy stuff to keep the numbers coming?
Right. And I think it is very short-sighted. If you're running a business today that is more focused on your internal metrics and less the customer's success, that will come back to bite you. I don't care if you're getting the extra dollars today, you will not preserve those long term. And the pipeline that's out there of folks who might be interested in you or being advocates today will not be advocates tomorrow, right? They will not be your second order revenue. They will not be your third order revenue. They will not be purchasing your product again. So you can count that goodbye. So listen, here's at the end of the day, I worked for companies in the past that we would have auto renews in contracts. We'll use this as a nice example because I think everyone's familiar with having an auto renewal in your contract that basically if you don't provide written notice within a period of time, guess what? Your contract automatically renews. And a lot of organizations do things like avoid talking to their customers during that window, or do not communicate or remind folks that there is an auto renewal. To be very honest with you, whether it is helping or hindering me as a leader, one of the things that we do, we start our renewal process 120 days out. So actually 125 days, we start some notifications to our customers, and then 120 days is when my CSMs are required to initiate the process with them. But we make sure the customers at 125 get their initial kind of notice that you're now in our window. In that message, we tell them, please review your contract, because if you have an auto renewal, we will need to know by, and then we give them the date, that you do not intend to renew. That will need to be in writing. Like, we are very clear about it. We make sure that, again, all the conversations we have now, when we do have that one-to-one, we manage the expectations there, because it's not my job to trap customers. That's not good business. And I will tell you, when I have customers leave, and it's sad when they do, especially if they are leaving for reasons like an M&A or business performance or other things that are outside their control, it's always sad to say goodbye. But I will tell you how we handle all of that, especially our offboarding process. And I invest as much in offboarding as I do in onboarding. And it is because I want the memory that they have of our brand and the engagements that they had to be positive ones. And I've never had a customer leave saying we will never come back. In fact, quite the opposite. Even when they leave, if there is a shortcoming in experience or product, because of how we manage the partnership, we always get the sentiment of, I'll be back. Or if I find myself in another company, I'll revisit. If our needs change, we'll circle back with you, right? There's always this door that's left open to come back. And so, listen, there's tons of dirty practice that's out there. I'm using the auto renewal one as one because I see it all the time. I've been on the receiving end of an auto renewal that I was like, no. So, I think that that's one tactic. But listen, how you treat people, you'll see that reflected in your business. So don't be short-sighted in that.
Yeah, that's a really good question and comment too. Question from Meg on kind of that scenario, and it's probably the same company that I'm thinking of too, a sales tech company that there was some hubbub in LinkedIn about in terms of the renewal process. And I think to your point, Christy, you can't burn that bridge because people won't come back. And it's hard because I think in this particular instance, they may be the 800-pound gorilla in the market. But these days people do have choices. They may not be the optimal choice, but people may kind of vote with their feet on that. And I would think CS would see the first of that migration ahead of finance, ahead of anybody. They would be kind of
Of course.
the leading function of all that migration. So I struggled with on that particular instance, and I don't know, all the ins and outs, but how could the leadership of that organization not be informed that those activities weren't happening? Like, it's a surprise to me that the leadership wouldn't be aware. Like, does CS have that much power to kind of enforce individual contracts or auto renewals? Or I would imagine there's probably some socialization that has to happen. They can't be making those decisions on their own, would be my guess. I mean, we'll never know, but do you have any insight in terms of like decision-making processes that you've seen with other organizations? Is it highly collaborative with legal, with finance, or is it more siloed? And maybe CS does have the power to make contractual decisions.
I've never been in an organization where customer success had so much power. So let's just first start there.
Right.
We often find ourselves in powerless positions, right? Where we are kind of executing what other parts of the business need and want us to do. Now, when it comes down to your contracts, I'm sorry, but there is no legal or finance organization, especially at certain size companies, that don't know what is being contractually enforced. We can all play stupid and pretend like we are oblivious and don't know, but that's just not the reality. We know what our contracts are. We know what we state, and the organization can decide whether or not to enforce it or not. Obviously, if you've got an issue that is going to impact your personal metrics and you have a lever that you can pull, perhaps that was a lever that they were pulling, right? To avoid churn at all cost, we are going to enforce this. And contractually, you are in the right to do it, right? Your customers, It is a contract that they signed. They are responsible for what is in that contract, right? They have to be accountable for it. But again, this is why I remind my customers, I resend the contract. I do everything I can to make sure we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're having this debate. And I will tell you, I have had customers where we've checked all the boxes, managed all the communication. They've decided to cancel after that window. And I've tried to enforce it in the sense that, like, I make it very clear that this is the policy. This is kind of where we're at contractually, legally. But do I ever like hold them to it? No, I don't know that in this current organization where I lead customer success and renewals and expansion and growth, I've not held them to it, because at the end of the day, I'm kicking the can down the block. Like, right? Like, this customer, they're going to be a drag on my resources because they don't want to be here. They're going to be probably deploying other software in the background. They're not going to engage with my CSMs, right? It is a burden on the business. Or you've got somebody who's not happy with your product, making high demands on your product organization by submitting feature requests, high number of support tickets. Like, there's a greater burden that needs to be evaluated that I think a lot of companies don't really consider. They'd rather have the logo and the dollars. And again, like I said, it's short-sighted when you view it that way. Now, again, I'm not in a position where I am letting go $1 million deals either. So I don't know the size of the organizations that are potentially trying to leave that company. In my organization, though, I just don't think it's good practice. I'd rather earn the right to retain my customers off of the merit of the work that my team does and our product, and kind of stand on that.
Well, here. I think that's, truer words are never spoken. Kind of building on your prediction of things we should be quoting you on in 2 years. What are a couple of other trends you're seeing in the customer success discipline? What are some things that you want people to keep an eye out for, and be ready to address as they either help or hurt?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest one right now is going to be AI. If you are not thinking about it or embracing it or being very intentional about how you're integrating that into your organization, I think you're going to miss the boat there. I say that there's kind of 3 P's that I focus on with my kind of focus on AI and how I want it to help lead out my organization. Is it helping productivity, proactivity, or personalization? Right? Those are the 3 things that I'm really focused on, is how can AI help support my business, right? I want my CSMs to have the bandwidth to be more proactive, or have AI drive out a proactive motion through automations and things like that. I need my team to really have some level of personalization for my customers. Again, we think about scale. I think everyone is focused on that right now, because guess what? We lost a bunch of people through rifts, and we didn't get the budget back. So now we've got less people on our teams, and still with a mandate of having to deliver a certain level of experience. You can't do that in a one-to-one environment any longer, right? So we have to think about a one-to-many approach. Being able to use technology to help with personalization will help create an illusion of this one-to-one experience that your customers once had at scale. So I think about these things, right? The personalization, the productivity, and the proactivity. Those things are really big for me. And so I think it's just how you embrace AI will be really telling for the success you'll have long term.
Have you found any particular tools that you're recommending? And just keep an eye here. This may be our last question, but any tools come to mind that on the AI front that we should be keeping an eye on, or just the normal ChatGPT type tools, or maybe tools within certain systems that have AI capabilities that we should be looking out at from a CS perspective?
Yeah, I think what you're probably going to see is that every piece of technology that you've got in your stack today probably is introducing some functionality in AI. So my recommendation to everybody is, before we start going to make a complete list of like, go buy these tools, instead, go back to the technologies that you have today, go re-engage your CSMs at those companies, and go find out how they're innovating around AI. Because I always tell people, like, let's not continue to expand our tech stack until we feel like we're getting real value from the tools that we've got in place today. So I'd say first start there, go research and find out how your current providers are evolving around AI. The second thing I would say there is, there are some things in some areas where I think AI right now is just more prevalent. I personally, I love ChatGPT. I use it all day, every day. It's open as much as like probably LinkedIn on my tabs here, because I find so much value and goodness in it. But I would say that the other thing to think about is starting off with like listening and engagement. And one of my favorite tools is Update AI. Kind of think about it as like Gong, but for customer success intentionally. And so I've been using that. It basically records your conversations with your customers, the summary, the follow-up, all of the automation it provides, but all of the intelligence behind that follow-up. It's really helping when I said that productivity for my team can be more productive as a result of using tools like that. So I think there are certain ones that probably have very specific use cases that everyone should be thinking about. But I would say lean into the tools that you have today and what are they doing to innovate around AI?
Yeah, good advice, especially in times of shrinking budgets. Use what
Right.
you
Nobody
have before
has
you
more
ask for
money.
more. Yep, 100%. Well, Christy, thank you. This has been an amazing set of thoughts and ideas for us in an area that we don't talk about enough. So thank you very much for joining us. John, kind of parting thoughts?
Yeah, no, Christy, this has been a great conversation. Good luck with the podcast. The name of the podcast again?
She's so sweet.
She is
It's
so
spelled
sweet.
SUITE.
Okay, gotcha. And it's just for women that are C-level executives
My
in
guests
tech.
are, yes, C-level executive women in tech right now, right? Maybe I'll get all of them one day and then I'll have to move on to another industry, but right now they are all tech.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're sticking with the customer theme next week. We've got the author of The Jolt Effect. I don't know if either of you have had a chance yet to read this book, but it's an excellent book about customers and kind of some insights around how to get people to buy. An excellent read. So Ted McKenna is the co-author. He'll be joining us next week, and then we'll see you at the same time, same place. Thanks again, Christy.
Thanks, guys.
And